my presentation, the general theme is leadership. So I thought the best way that I could talk about it is by sharing my personal journey and things that I learned in the process. So I call it things you should know before you take on that leadership role. It's just things I wish I had known before I gotten into it, before I got into it. So this is just something to think about as I go on with my presentation. If there was one thing that you could tell yourself before you took on your first leadership role, what would it be? So imagine yourself being that young 5 or 6 years older self of like version of yourself. You're taking on that role, you're very excited, you have no past experience, you suddenly feel a burden of responsibility on your shoulders, and you're going to do a project on your own, so you're super excited. So now what would you tell that version of yourself before you took on that role? Well, let's get on with it. So a little bit about myself. My name is Natasha Raut. I am a rising junior at UC Berkeley. I am double majoring in molecular and cell biology and data science. My background, I am an international student here. I am originally from Mumbai, India. That's where I was the entirety of the pandemic quarantine, and I came back to the US in January. In terms of my interests, I enjoy working out or running. I enjoy doing yoga, and I also enjoy digital art. Fun fact, that's a drawing that I made of myself doing yoga at the bottom right of the screen. And then academically, my interests lie at the intersection of computer science or data science and biology. As I mentioned earlier, I'm interested in pursuing a career in healthcare analytics or clinical analytics, something around that area. As a leader, I would say that I am creative, hardworking, and passionate. And in a little bit, you will maybe agree or disagree with me. So why am I qualified to talk about this topic? Let's just go over my leadership experience and my journey, which is basically the foundation of this entire presentation. My first serious leadership role was in about 2014 when I took on the role of an Indian classical dance tutor for my academy. So I've been a dancer since I was 6 years old, and that was the first time I got to teach students dance. Then there's this sport called throwball in India, and I was captain of my school team for several years. And in India, in school, we have this system where the entire school is divided into 4 groups called houses. And basically, these houses just compete with each other in different tournaments, be it sports or academics. It's just a fun way to build team spirit. So I was captain for my house in the 10th grade. Then from 2017 to 2019, which was 11th and 12th grade for me, I continued to be a dance tutor. I was also an academic tutor. And I founded this organization in my city that connects book donors to NGOs that are in need of those specific books. So our organization is essentially a channel that connects these two groups. And then when I came to college, leadership was on a much larger scale with a very diverse crowd. So that was very exciting. And that involved a service organization called Project Rishi, which does sustainable development work in rural India. And I am the project lead for the education team in this organization. I am also a research mentor for the undergraduate lab where I'm training undergraduates who are doing research for the first time. And with Berkeley's business school, Haas, I'm working on another rural development project in India. So that's an independent study. So I'm basically leading that group. So that's my leadership journey. So throughout this journey, there have been a lot of things that I learned, and I feel like everyone who has been a leader might have also learned at some point. So now is the time you think about the first question that I asked you. What would you tell yourself before you took on your first leadership role? And do any of these things resonate with you? So things that I have learned as a research mentor. As a research mentor, I realized that it's not all the commitment that you are told you have to put in. It's always underplayed. Like you have to put in a lot more time and effort than you are expected to. Because teaching someone something you think you know is not as easy as it seems, because you need to figure out a way to convey this information to students in a better manner. How I learned this was the students that I'm mentoring on a biostatistics project had no background in coding, had no background in biostatistics. So I had to be extremely patient with them. I had to teach them everything from scratch. I had to watch videos on my own so that I understood the concept better before teaching them. So you have to be patient in this whole process. And then last is accountability. When you're assigning tasks that involve, say, writing a research paper, very similar to our roles at Berkeley Pharmatech, it's important to keep your team accountable for the tasks that they have to do. Because when you do research, there are pieces that just fit in together. Like somebody's looking at, say, one part of a molecule and someone else is looking at the impact. They have to work together. They can't work as like singular entities. So in this kind of a work environment, you need to make sure everyone in the team is held accountable for their work, and it's your responsibility to also hold yourself accountable and make sure you are doing the task that you're assigned to do. So it's, in short, it's difficult, but you learn as you go. Then, second things that I learned as a project lead, as I said, I was a project lead for education. This was one of the most difficult leadership roles that I've had to date, because I became a lead when the pandemic happened. I actually became a lead in March 2020. And that really confused us in terms of the work that we did, because we tried to implement different projects in India, but the fluid situation due to the pandemic made us change things all the time. So we tried to implement e-learning solutions, but the schools opened up again. And we tried to implement school solutions, but the school closed down again. And it was very difficult for us to decide how involved we want to be and how much we can help them out. So this responsibility, and this applies to not just my role, but also leadership roles in service organizations, that your actions have a much bigger impact than you think. You don't know how much one decision you make will impact the lives of other people. We're working with one village in India, but our work impacts the life of one student, and that's a huge success for us. Then leadership is not only about telling others what to do, it's about making choices and learning to live with them. Scrapping projects on e-learning when Indian students really needed e-learning was so difficult for us. It was so hard for me as a leader to accept the fact that we don't have the resources to go ahead with this project. And I had to live with that until the spring semester came on and we found other ways to do it. But during fall, the previous semester, it was very difficult for me to do that. But as a leader, it's my responsibility to make these decisions and live with them. And it is okay and natural to make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes in my journey of being a project lead in this organization. But the key here is communicate. If you're struggling, if you made a mistake, reach out to people who know better than you, collaborate with your team. And even if the times are difficult, like I was in another country for the first half of the semester, for the first semester, in fact, and collaborating on Zoom was really difficult. It was, like 7 a.m. for me when it was meeting time, and it was really difficult. But communicate when something's difficult and you would be fine. Then, being an independent researcher, where I talked about my project with Berkeley's business school, you as a leader, and not just as a learner, but also as a leader, need to think out of the box. Because when you're doing something creative, something unique, you have to be innovative when you do so. As a leader, it's the one way you measure your own success and your team's success is seeing how much progress you've made, seeing how much closer you are to your end goal. But it is important to remember that even if you make little progress, it's still progress. Sometimes you might be stuck somewhere. There might be a hurdle. Something might be difficult for you. But as long as you keep going and you don't give up, it's all going to work out. And lastly, since this project involved rural development and developing business solutions for rural development, I learned one thing, that my privilege played a really important role in me being a leader and how I use that leadership. So it's extremely important to remember where you come from and how much you can contribute given where you come from. And lastly, an academic and dance tutor. From the presentations that I saw before mine, everyone had many people have been a tutor in some capacity, tutored students. For me, I've had the opportunity to be both an academic and dance tutor. So, firstly, as an academic tutor, I I was teaching students high school chemistry, biology, and mathematics. And as a dance tutor, as I mentioned, I was training 4 students for about 4 to 5 years in the entire repertoire of the Indian classical dance. That's a picture of me at an Indian classical dance performance. But as a tutor, you are a leader in a sense that in the way that you shape a student, you have the power to shape how a student perceives themselves and how they perceive what you are teaching them. So your words are really important here, and you have to be very careful how you talk to them. Then, secondly, you can unlock potential. You must always, I mean, in my experience, you must always allow students to ask questions, to have their own opinions, and to share what they feel like sharing in that moment, because you never know who has what potential, and you being able to give them that space can unlock tremendous potential. And lastly, remember that time when you had an amazing team leader or a director or anyone who left a lasting impact on you. Imagine 3 years from now, someone you are tutoring comes up to you and says that you were the person that had that impact on them. So think about that. Think about the impact you're having on someone when you are a tutor or a leader for that matter. In conclusion, overall, rather, I realized that we've all had leadership roles and are currently in multiple leadership roles, which is difficult because when you're a leader in one position, the rest of your life doesn't stop. You still have to manage time, still have to be able to go to classes, give finals. All of these things still happen. So how do you manage? In my opinion, these are a few things that work and have worked for me. So, firstly, prioritize. I cannot stress how important it is. For me, I do it through lists. Prioritize what you are going to do in a day, in a week, in a month, just so that you know where and what exactly is expected of you. Then being more productive. Say you don't have that much time for something. This is a technique that I use, that my parents also use. They told me about it. It's the Pomodoro technique. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it, but it's basically doing work for 25 minutes, taking a 5-minute break, then again 25 minutes of work, and then a 10-minute break. So the amount of work you put in those 25 minutes has to be of the best quality. It's just 25 minutes, but the amount of work you can get done in 25 minutes is crazy. You have no idea what your potential is when you work in these concentrated amounts. Then next is plan ahead. I think as team leaders at Berkeley Pharmatech, we've also realized the importance of planning ahead. Since it's like a 6-month long project, it's divided into certain phases, and we need to make sure those goals are met periodically. So plan ahead, see what your goal for the end of the month is, and make sure throughout the week that you are getting to that goal in some shape or form. This is one thing I learned very recently. Always have an agenda for meetings. I have noticed leaders who hold meetings and then they go off topic for a really long time, or they finish too early. But having an agenda allows you to stay on point, finish exactly what you want to finish while respecting yours and other people's time. And lastly, this is something I was afraid of doing, but don't be scared to delegate tasks. Don't be the perfectionist who wants everything done in a specific way. Trust that your team can do the work that they have to, so that you have time to do other things as well. And don't be scared to ask for help. If you're struggling, if your task is not going as it's supposed to, ask a senior person, ask a peer, ask your team, and everyone will always be willing to help you. Most people will be willing to help you. And lastly, that was basically my journey and what I learned from it. So in case you guys are curious, or just because I wanted to share, these are the next steps for me in my journey, and I will just briefly touch upon how leadership would play a role in each. I'm a summer researcher at Berkeley, starting in a few weeks, in fact, in a computational nucleic acid lab. And I'm really excited because I am one of the only undergraduates working there. So I'm being given a project of my own that I have to lead. which is really exciting. I'm also focusing on business and analytics for concentration in data science and doing a certificate in entrepreneurship. So I'm really excited to take classes in leadership in my college because there are a lot of really good professors teaching these classes. So I want to know what I can do better and what I have been doing wrong to just improve my leadership skills as I go on. Leadership is all about dedication and passion. And I think for me, I show that not just in my leadership roles, but I want to do that in every area of my life. So just to sort of develop my own skills, I'm going to improve my coding skills and increase my workout difficulty over this summer. And finally, what is the end goal? Like, what am I doing with all of this? I am going to be a junior in a couple of months, but I am still finding my passion. I know it's somewhere at the intersection of healthcare and technology and analytics, but I have time, and I think all of these experiences are just shaping the path that I'm going to take from here on. Thank you.